Hey everyone, we're here with a special edition of TechRaptor Podcast. We're here with our special guest, performance capture actress Danielle Bisutti. Hello, Danielle.
Hi, guys.
Hi. And of course, I'm Robert, your features editor at TechRaptor, and Andrew is over there, our editor-in-chief. If you don't know, she plays Freya in a little-known game called God of War and God of War Ragnarok. I'm sure many of you are probably playing through the game right now, and we thought it's very exciting to have Freya here with us. So thank you so much, Danielle, for joining us here today.
Well, thank you so much for reaching out. We've been kind of in communication here for a few months and just wanted to wait for the game to come out so I could actually speak to my experience and not have there be many spoilers, and also not have Sony angry if I I mean, and I understand. I mean, it's just so much goes into these games, and the fans are so protective. They really want to be surprised, and I appreciate that because I don't even watch like the preview for like The Walking Dead, right? They're like, here's clips from the next episode. I just leave. I'm like, no, I don't want to know. I want to be surprised.
Exactly. So I think it's good that we can set ground rules here for us and the audience too. We don't plan on spoiling it. We're not going to ask you like, what's the ending or whatever. Of course, that's not the goal for this. So I'm curious, we're right now, how many days out from the release? About 5 days or so? How has it been since the release? How's the reception?
This will be the 5th day. Oh, it's been incredible. And Chris and I were talking about this, and Corey, in the first game, it felt like just a tidal wave that we were just trying to surf and navigate. And there's so much joy knowing, and so much gratitude knowing that the game is touching so many lives out there, and it's really satisfying the gamers. Obviously, the first big left turn in the last game in 2018 was somewhat of a surprise, right? Because all of a sudden they gave Kratos this son, and it changed everything. Right. But the legacy of that, to have to stand on the shoulders of that and then top it and then satisfy on every level was a Herculean effort, but it was like, and I think that there was a lot of nervousness of like, oh God, like what if we don't surpass it? And we did, per the critics, per the fans. So we're very happy, elated.
That's great.
Very cool.
Andrew, do you want to take the next?
I was curious. I was reading about you talking about when you first started doing Freya in 2018 for God of War, and you mentioned that you did a bunch of research into Norse mythology, because obviously Freya is a huge figure in Norse mythology and involved in a ton of different tales with a bunch of people. And I was wondering, so I'm guessing you probably didn't have to do as much of that this time. You had a little bit of the ground, foundation done for that. So what was it like preparing for Ragnarok?
It's so funny. So do you remember when in the Thor Marvel movies Ragnarok came out? I had no idea what it meant. I was like, Ragnarok, that's such a weird word. What's Ragnarok, But I'm obsessed. I love Cate Blanchett, and her character Hela was so fascinating. I was like, what's happening? So that was my first introduction to Ragnarok. And then of course my true deep dive into Norse mythology. Yeah, I'm a very studious person. I'm like a copious note taker, and I'm very detail oriented. It helps me lay that foundation so that the spirit of the character or the artistry can just kind of flow through. But I have to know what the groundwork is, right? What the structure is. Yeah. I did a ton more research because obviously there was a lot more to the story. And one of the foundational manuscripts is the Poetic Edda, which was what Matt Sophos and Rich Gobert and Corey Barlog all encouraged me to read. However, very dense and confusing, because I'm sure you know this, because like one text will say Freya with the Y and then one with the J, and sometimes she's Frigg, and then they took the artistic license to make that the nickname that Odin called her. And that's the whole thing, is like these are the foundational manuscripts. You read it, you get the foundation, but then at the end of the day, I'm actually reading what Matt, Rich, and Corey and the whole team, the writing team at Santa Monica Studios has laid out for me. But being that little scientist, nerdy, researcher, I did enjoy it.
Well, that's great to hear. Yeah. And I think based on, we've all seen the ending of 2018, and at least in the very beginning, we see a very different Freya. She's emotionally spiritually in a very different, perhaps angry place. So I'm curious, what was it like embodying that chapter in Freya's life? Did it feel strange, different, angry?
And you're referring to the beginning of Ragnarok?
Yeah.
Right now?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that was the looming question mark, wasn't it? Everybody was like, "Ooh, we don't know what Freya we're going to get." But that speech, basically, where I condemn him to the vilest filth in hell, would sort of be a bit of a promise, wouldn't it? That in this next game, we would have to have a reckoning between us. It felt really right. It felt really responsible of the writers that they allowed Freya to basically wreak havoc from all the grief that she felt and the anger. And also at that point in the story, she's really not ready to take responsibility for her actions, which I think is probably the most powerful message in the game, is that, yeah, there's prophecy, but what's our hand in that prophecy? What choices did we make that actually the Norns, let's say, could foresee? And in that moment, when Kratos and Freya realize, oh, wow, my actions actually had a consequence. That to me is like, I get chills every time. I'll never forget when I read it. I was like in tears to Matt, Eric, and to Rich. And I was like, you guys are writing almost like a pathway for responsible living for like every gamer. They just want to be hacking off monsters' heads. And you're giving them like the foundational way of like being a good human being in the world, which is actually taking responsibility for your actions. And I was blown away. So it felt right to start off angry and rageful and guttural when I screamed Kratos. I almost lost my voice that day because I was waiting for that moment. I had so much for Freya's story. I'm very, I wouldn't say, maybe a little defensive for my character, but I'm an advocate for my character, right? I wanted to give her every color of expression, unadulterated, like unfettered, and I think it came through.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I have to say, I agree, especially seeing, some of your later scenes, not to spoil anything, of course, but I think you do a fantastic job of just embodying the character and you just see Freya come to life on screen, Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. They gave me a lot to work with.
That's great. Andrew, do you want to take a next question?
Well, I was saying, so when you're in that state with Freya and kind of where she begins in Ragnarok, there's a common theme in a lot of games, and I guess a lot of media, is that cycle of vengeance and violence and how it's not the best usually. I was wondering, did you see when you were preparing for Freya and doing your research, did you see the similarities that Freya's path was of where Kratos had been coming? Because like you said, it was such a big change in 2018 where we saw Kratos from what we're used to. It's kind of like you're in that beginning part of Kratos. I was wondering if that dawned to you. You realize that when you were preparing.
Yeah, I think so. I think that they're masters at weaving these stories together, aren't they? And so where someone that's your greatest enemy, when you realize the commonalities that you have with that person, right? Like one biblical thing that is like, before pulling the speck out of your brother's eye, pull the log out of your own. That always stuck with me because it's like, or you point the finger, there's three pointing back at you. In what ways is so easy to judge, right? And then project. And then they both get their, what's handed to them with the Norns. Like that scene still blows my mind. But yeah, I felt like there was absolute symmetry and it made sense that there was this like love-hate between them. And it was really beautiful when I think that they kind of became a united front in their journey. Both parents, both suffered great loss. And that they would be able to tread this road together, I thought was pretty powerful.
Yeah, I agree.
Almost like the masculine and feminine of the other, right? Like almost the negative of the other. I like how you pointed that out. Like I felt she absolutely went through a very similar journey as Kratos, and then they realized, oh well, maybe we should be friends.
Right.
It was just one of those things hard not to notice when you mentioned, people just want to go through and chop people to pieces. But while we were preparing for this, we were talking about our favorite moments of like God of War are those exact moments, those character moments of those happening together, those people colliding it with the emotions or whatever events are happening.
Right.
I love hearing that. Yeah.
Those
and
are
it's
absolutely
also
the best.
And it's also fun to chop off heads with the
sure.
the blades of chaos or the Leviathan. I mean, the Leviathan's so cool. It's like this fun, like Thor, like, what was it, Mjolnir? How do you pronounce that? Mjolnir? Like, I love how it's just Mjolnir. You guys do it better than I do. And it just comes back in his hand. That's got to feel so gratifying. But yeah, I think you're right. I think that the pathway that was laid in 2018 was that now people are so invested in these journeys, in these characters' journeys.
Yeah, like even though they're gods, the story is very human. Right.
Oh, yeah.
They humanized gods.
Yeah, exactly. And actually on that, I'm curious that because you guys do performance capture, right? This isn't just sitting in a booth separate from each other. You're on a stage in a way, working with the other actors. So when we see you and Freya and Kratos interacting in the game, Kratos is this huge, intimidating man. Like you wouldn't want to be in an elevator with him. Is that what it's like working with Chris Judge? What is it like working with Chris Judge?
What's it like working with Chris Judge? It's a lot of things.
Yeah.
The pervasive feeling is just total reverence, respect, and there's an intimacy there because I think there's so much care that he has devoted his life and his whole, like all of his faculties into Kratos. He cares so much about this game, so much about the characters, so much of who he's been as a father that he's been able to channel in, so much of my personal life with some of the losses that I've gone through while this game was happening. Like the way that it lined up, the symmetry of everything was very mystical. It was like, I mean, even this game, just some of the growth that, that I've just personally gone through as a human being, that I was able to go, oh my God, I actually have an opportunity to channel some of that through this character. I think Chris has felt similar. So it's been nothing but respectful and supportive. I mean, I could easily call him one of my closest friends because he is. And, he's also a big nerd and he's a dude and he's gross. There's gross, he'll say like gross, whatever. I mean, like there's that, right. And so you're just like, oh God, Chris. But, no, but every time it was cameras on, stepping into the volume, it was like a sanctuary of reverence. Everybody, when we stepped in there, it was, we knew how important it was to do justice to the story and characters, and even everyone around, on the technical side, on the other side of the glass, when they were sitting, with their little faders, and it was just like there was a still point that would happen when we did these scenes. And Chris was a major leader in creating that environment.
That's amazing. That's kind of how I imagine it too, that a man of his stature, of that character too, that's nice to know that he kind of backs that up, right? With that amount of reverence and love for the character that I think a lot of people have, right?
Yeah. And I'd love to be in an elevator with him, especially if he was my bodyguard.
Well,
I think that'd be fantastic.
I don't mean to insult Mr. Judge.
Yeah.
What's that?
I don't mean to insult Mr. Judge. I'm talking about Kratos. I feel like you get in an elevator and you see a dude with a big axe and two blades on his back.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'll take the next one.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Andrew, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, we were wondering, we don't get an opportunity to ask many people this question, but we were wondering how it felt to be in what was the game of the year for a lot of people. So we're talking about 2018. Obviously, Ragnarok's got a shot, but 2018 won the Game Awards, which is basically the Oscars equivalent, I guess, of gaming, and a bunch of other outlets. So what was that like?
I think it was 189 Game of the Year type wins. It was insane. I didn't realize how many award shows there were for video games. I was like, it's almost like it's like Jewish holidays. There's like at least 5 per month. I'm like, this is what it felt like Christmas morning every day. I'm like, another one. Oh, another one. I keep going back to the word gratitude because, sometimes you see like a certain movie that wins the like Independent Spirit, or like it'll win the the Oscar, but it also wins the Golden Globe, and it's across the board. It just kind of like will dominate because of the brilliance, because of the emotional content resonating in the zeitgeist. Like I felt so lucky, because I've done a few projects, like all of us have done a lot of projects. So lucky to experience what I call it like a tidal wave. It was like riding this wave. And I was like, and I remember Chris and Corey and I, we were like in the lounge, I think at Delta, and we were like, well, this might be the first and last time this ever happens in our lives. And at least we have this, and we're so grateful. We don't know if it'll ever happen again. So let's just make the most of it. And then to know that we might have another opportunity with Ragnarok, and not just because, we want to dominate all the stages, but because it worked, because we did it right. Yeah. And there were so many chances to, I think, maybe screw it up, make a turn that didn't work. And so many lives that committed so much of their time and energy and creativity and emotion that, it's super gratifying. And I hope it gets the recognition it deserves, because it is excellent.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people's blood, sweat, and tears went into this, right? And it's definitely coming to show. I mean, if anything, the review scores alone will let you know. And I'm sure people will still be talking about this game weeks and weeks from now, right? As people uncover more and more of it.
I read somewhere they called it the game of a generation. I thought
High
that
praise.
was really powerful. Like it's, and I call it like a movement because the emotional response and like just people dressing up like Kratos or naming their dog Freya, like naming their daughters Freya. It is not, it's like it's in our lives at this particular moment in history. It has touched all of our lives. And so there's like a sense of family that happens, which makes it even more special.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree.
That makes you wonder if, like, because of how big God of War got, I was talking with Rob before, how it almost feels like when a big game like this comes out, it gets a fandom like Star Wars, just sprouts out of nowhere. It gets its own little group of people. Are you ready to be known as Freya forever?
Oh, yeah, sure. Why not? I would have loved to have been Princess Leia. I wanted to be her growing up, I have my little slave Leia on the wall, and I have my like Leia from episode 4 with the buns, obviously. And just, of course, wanted to I'll ride this horse all the way to the very end. However they want to continue me in the franchise, I will give everything I gave and more and forever, because I love her. I love her so much, and I love the story, and I love everybody at Sony Santa Monica Studios. Just, they are such great people. I don't want to cry. I'm gonna try to hold back, but I'm serious when I tell you, because again, like, you do a lot of projects and you don't always. It's one thing to be on a winner stage. It's another thing to be on a winner stage with people that you just love and you respect, and you're like, gosh, God smiled on me today.
Well, I'm sure the people at Sony Santa Monica are feeling the love as well. And
a little too much. I love like Freya. Like, take it back a few notches. It's a lot of information coming at me.
So as far as I understand, God of War was one of your first roles in video games, but you've done a lot of acting outside of it. So I noticed since God of War 2018, you've done other things. Like, I think you were in Disney Dreamlight Valley. You were in Madden 21. So is video games something that's kind of more on your radar now as an actress that you want to keep doing more?
Sure. I mean, let's go. Like, who wants to hire me? I'm like ready for more.
We can use this as your resume.
It's not a bad resume, God of War. But no, right around the time of, so it was God of War, and then yes, there was Madden, and that was really, really cool to be a part of that. Most of my scenes were so crazy that they got literally like whittled down, which I was a little bummed about, only because I thought that the character I played kind of added a little bit of, just some humor and a little bit of humanity. But I think that the Madden franchise is a little bit, it knew its lane. and it wanted to stay in that lane.
Yeah.
But to be a part of that legacy of a video game was also like a huge honor. I was like, oh my goodness. Yeah. And then what was so interesting about Dreamlight Valley is because I did not know that they were going to give me that credit.
Oh,
really?
Yeah, because I will double the voice of Elsa on occasion. Oh, and it was never something that I was really able to talk about, because the idea is to mimic it in a way where it feels like Idina, and it sounds like Idina, who I have the utmost like obvious respect for. Oh my goodness gracious, she's incredible. So when, oh my God, Freya is also Elsa in this video game, I was like, oh shit, I'm gonna get fired. Disney's gonna come and find me. They're gonna burn my house down. No, I'm just teasing. I was nervous. I was like, who told you? And she's like, no, they gave you a credit. And I was like, that was so nice of them.
Wow. Yeah.
I really liked that.
I didn't even know that you doubled as Elsa. That's amazing. Yeah.
Right. You did a very good job. No idea.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. It was to play then both of them wield magic in their own way. It's been a witchy experience, to say the least.
For sure. Andrew, do you want to take the next one?
We were curious. Have you had a chance to play God of War? Do you play games much at all?
So this is my albatross. This is my Achilles heel. I want to. Mm-hmm. I am really good with the joystick. People know this because I am a child of the late 80s, early 90s. Yeah. Arcade. So I'm great at Miss Pac-Man. I'm really great. I'm fun in an arcade. Mm-hmm. And I was there for the first Mario Brothers, which obviously is like, oh my God, Mario. Like all my nephews are obsessed. Whenever I tell them bedtime stories, all they want me to tell them is like a mashup between Star Wars and Mario. So we create this like alternate universe where like they all coexist. It's really cute. But I remember those old controllers, and I was actually quite good at them. Mm-hmm. I don't know what to do with the new controller at all, but I want to learn. So I'm just putting out there, in the next couple of weeks, there might be a little instructional video teaching Freya how to play her own game. I think that could be kind of fun.
Very cool.
Or incredibly boring, boring, but come to laugh. That's what I would say.
I bet that'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think that's a similar experience, because I had my dad's a very big sports guy, and we have a relative who's getting into sports stuff, and he's like, man, I haven't played a game since the 90s or whatever, and handing him a controller, he's like, I don't know what the hell to do with it.
Yeah, no idea. X, Y, B, A, 1, 2 side things. Oh, I don't know.
I'd say God of War is kind of complicated for like to just jump
right in. Yeah.
Well, I actually had Mila over at Santa Monica Studios. Now she does the accessibility, which is really great, so that people, even if someone has a handicap that they're dealing with currently in their life, can play the game, which is incredible. I said, I have a big handicap. It's called not at all knowing what to do with it. So I said, can you help people like me who were just a little bit on the sad, pathetic end of the spectrum? And he was like, absolutely, we can help you learn how to play the game. So I'm just saying, there may be a video coming out soon. It could be fun. I want the experience. I'm jealous of like the experience, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it's something that a lot of people should experience, even if they haven't, like, even if people are like you who don't play many games, right? It's a story that I think transcends beyond just, being locked, quote unquote, behind like this gameplay, right? Like there's a story there that I think is very relevant to a lot of people. Like everyone is a child of someone, everyone could eventually become a parent of someone, right? Like being on both sides of that spectrum, I think it's a very relatable story.
I think so. Yeah. I think that's you are either the child or you're the parent, and sometimes you've been both.
Yeah.
You're 100% right. And wow, I just, every time I see Corey, I just look at him and I go, great job. Like, congratulations, because he had a conviction to like stir things up and like go against, again, like just kind of like I bring up the Madden thing, right? Because they could have allowed for a different direction, but they're like, no, let's stay on this brand. Well, that could have absolutely happened over at Sony. Like, hey, you know what? They don't want Kratos to shed a tear. This guy's supposed to be smashing stuff and going in the harem and betting all these women. And I'll never forget the first time I saw some of that footage. I was like, what is happening in this game?
Yeah.
This is a totally different guy. This is Kratos.
No, I have a major crush on Kratos. Like, I have a major. I love the beard. I love him when he gets grumpy. He's funny. He's funny when he goes.
Yeah, this is funny without being funny. You know, like he's funny to laugh at, right?
He's funny to laugh at, and it's funny with like Brock will make fun of him or Mimir, you know, and it's fun. Just love fun.
Yeah, I'm curious. So you said you haven't played many video games since your arcade days, but during your career, I guess, how have you viewed video games as someone who was previously like an industry outsider and now you're kind of on the inside, or like you've worked on games, you've worked with people who do games? Like, has your view on the medium changed over time?
Oh, yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, look, I personally am not a fan of just violence for violence, period. I don't care what medium I'm in. I don't care if it's television, film, or video game. I don't, unless it's grounded in something justified for the characters, for the world. But anything that borders into gratuitous, I just personally, as an audience member, I kind of tune out. Yeah. I'm like, I feel like you're using a gimmick. You're trying to shock me, or I don't care. So there are probably some video games that probably I'll never play because the violence for me, it doesn't do it for me. I love fantasy. I love lore. I love sci-fi. And you will find in all of those genres, psychological thriller, there is violence. I mean, and then like I love horror. I'm like a Stephen King in that zone, kind of. I don't like the hacking off the body parts so much. But yeah, what a great medium. And why it's so effective is because of the immersive quality, right? Because the gamer becomes the hero, right? The anti-hero. And you are navigating. So all of your emotional like faculties are like in it, and you're like living it and breathing it. I don't think there's anything else more seductive or more effective than that. And the opportunity that a lot of games have now, I think by some of the games like God of War, The Last of Us is another one that I think of that had a really beautiful story. Uncharted. Naughty Dog does great stuff, right?
Yes,
I love Naughty Dog. I'm like, Naughty Dog, I want to play with you. What a great opportunity to continue to tell great stories. And you can have the violence and the romance and all of it. You can have all of the monsters that you want. But like when you ground it in characters that you care about, this is the winning recipe every single time. Doesn't matter what medium you're on. And I think video games is probably the most powerful of all. I really do. Yeah. Now I do. Now I know. You're right. I'm on the inside now.
Yeah, because I think once you're in there and you're feeling the emotion, like it's not just you're watching characters on the screen feel the emotion, but you embody that character in some way, you know? I think that really helps you connect. Yeah.
It's incredible.
Andrew, do you want to take the next?
So in that similar vein, like you have obviously great character scenes between you and Kratos talking about whatever, having a moment, but then there's also those moments where you're just running through a certain part of the game, and you as a character are there to assist the player in some fashion. So you're like, hey, go look at that thing over there, or whatever it is. So how different is it reading, voicing that versus acting out another like emotionally charged scene?
I'm really glad you asked me that question. That's the most challenging for me. I am so much, because I'm a child of the theater, right? And Chris always makes fun of me because he calls me master thespian, and he likes to tease me, and I'm like, yeah, I'm a thespian. Yeah, I studied the theater. Sorry,
you take pride in it.
But he likes to tease me about that. So when we're in the volume, it's like black box theater, right? Like very minimal, okay? Because we're in the mocap suit. we're acting out the scene, and it's a living, breathing organism. I mean, there's, Dory or Tater Tot this time around, with the no-cut camera, and we're all this living, breathing organism inside the moment, the magic of the moment being captured. That is incredible. And I can do that all day, every day, 365, right? But when it comes to Raider on the left, Raider on the right, I was like, I suck, don't fire me. And I was we had a lot of help with that. Margaret was one of the directors on that, and she really helped me find that warrior spirit of Freya in those moments where I'm sort of either protecting him or barking orders, and because that didn't come naturally for me. So that was the most strain on me, sort of emotionally and mentally, but also a little bit like vocally wise, because it's a lot of like, the world is ending type shouting that needed to be grounded. And then it was like, I was like, how many monsters do I have are on the left and the right? I'm like, what? Are we done? But once I found that stride, and Margaret helped me out with that a lot, I feel like now that was like almost like a schooling for me, so that if I were to step into another game, I would, I know how to do this now. It was just a little outside of my comfort zone. Yeah.
It's definitely a different set of talents, right? Versus between acting out something for the character versus acting out something really in service for the player, right? That's what those lines are for. It's to help the player do the game, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And as you said, I became a companion character, which was so cool. I was so happy they did that. And I felt like, of course, the female gamers will really love that. And I was hoping that also, the male game, like the men, the boys, like, that they would really see Freya in a new light. And the response and the feedback I've been getting on my Twitter feed, I think that they have. And I think they're really appreciating her journey and all the different emotions that she's feeling, and the fact that she can wield double swords, and, she can be right there in the middle of combat, but she's also quiet at the fireplace, or at the fire pit with Atreus, and and she's pulling out roots and weeping and breaking old patterns and old spells, and they seem to really embrace all of her feminine attributes and all of her masculine attributes. Obviously, as humans, we have both in us, so it's been really cool. It's been rewarding.
I feel like overall that we see a really good character arc with her. That's fascinating to see.
I'm so lucky because they wrote her that way. They gave her such a fulfilling arc. And you can only say what's on the page, right? Yeah. I mean, and this is not the kind of format where you do a lot of improv, by the way. Everything is very technical. Maybe I had an idea on how to say something, or something wasn't quite coming out of my mouth, but being that sort of meticulous actor that I am, I wanted to say the words the way they wrote it. I wanted to pronounce things properly in the Norse with all of the Norse words and all the different like Svartalfheim, to make sure I got that F out there, and little things like that. So Svartalfheim, say that 10 times fast.
Actually, on that, I'm curious. I know Freya says a lot of like the magical words to like open doors. Yeah. How hard was that?
Some are easier than others. Obviously Falky is a real fun one. That's super easy. It just turns into the falcon. And some of them are a little more challenging than others. It's just, it's like it's just a foreign tongue. But, after a while you start understanding the Norse alphabet and the phonetics and the pronunciation. And so it becomes a little bit easier for your mouth to spit the word out in the proper way, to wrap your mouth around the way like it needs to sound, the diphthongs and the consonants, and like Sather magic. It's spelled with a D. It's like an interesting D with like a little, I think there's little dots over it, or like
a thing over like it.
Yeah, it's like a little accent or something. So the D is like a TH sound, Sather rather than Sader, things like that.
Interesting.
Yeah. I'm still learning a lot. I mean, like that was fun. Matt Sophos, he's the director, he's like the head of writing at Santa Monica Studios, would always really help me with that during our sessions. So.
Right. Well, I think we only have time for one more question. Andrew, do you want to?
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you all want, if you have like one or two or three more, we can go over just a touch if you like, depending on if I've satiated everything. Like, I don't want to leave any like big question unanswered.
I think we've gotten through all of our big ones. Yeah, but Andrew, if you have any.
Oh, good.
We were wondering, what do you hope players learn from Freya's journey through Ragnarok? Because obviously she starts somewhere, and I don't know where it ends yet, but it's going to be very different than where it started, I'm sure.
I think the best way to answer that question is I hope that a couple things. I hope they give themselves permission to feel their feelings. There's a lot, we have collectively gone through a lot in the last couple of years as humanity, right?
Yeah.
There's been a lot of mental health issues. I think in part, people sometimes don't allow themselves just to feel the spectrum of what they're feeling, or they can judge an emotion as being bad or wrong. Why am I sad? Why am I angry? These emotions are just energy that need to be expressed. They also are indicators. So maybe something's not aligned. Well, you meet Freya in the first 7 minutes of the game, and she's not aligned. Okay.
No.
But she is playing out what she feels she's convicted by. Now, I'm not saying go out there and, take a sword to somebody's neck. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, I think through the course of her being truthful about how she was feeling, and then and curious about why this happened, and through the course of Freya's journey, when she does have that moment of reckoning with herself. Wait a minute. I can't play the victim anymore. I can't play the victim of this prophecy, that I actually had a hand in what happened to my son, what happened to Balder. I mean, that just cracks her heart wide open. It just breaks it into a million pieces. And I think in that moment, and even the moment when she's pulling on the roots, she realizes vengeance and revenge is not the answer. It never is. Maybe it feels good, right? But it's not. It's never going to give her that peace. What finally gives her the peace is taking responsibility, forgiveness, dare I say, and choosing a new path. So she went through this beautiful arc to finally get to that place of like peace.
Yeah. That's some really wise words, I think. And I hope that's a message that a lot of people kind of walk away with when they get through the game and see what her story is like.
We all have an opportunity to heal and forgive. Sometimes someone in our life, sometimes ourselves. Sometimes you have to cut people out of your life. She went ahead and realized she got to cut Odin out of her life. That guy's a narcissistic megalomaniac. I mean, this is not a story about stay with those people who mistreat you, right? But then she had to understand, oh, wait, I chose into that. I made these choices. I'm not a victim of this outcome. And if I don't want these outcomes, maybe I can garner some wisdom from this moment and make different choices, right? Doesn't Kratos say we must choose better, right? We have to make different choices.
Yeah. He says like we must be better, right?
Choice to be better. We must. What is it? Choose to be better. What is it exactly again?
I think it's don't be sorry, be better. Is usually what he says.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, but then when he has my son's neck, we must be better.
Oh, yeah, we must be better. Yeah, a bit gruesome.
And there he was, not being very better, but I got what he was trying to do. He was trying to break the cycle, and of course, it's the cause and effect. That action had an effect, and we start snowballing until we finally got to the point where there was no one else to blame. There was only ourselves to look at. And then we were able to, the idea is forge a new path.
Yeah, because it's almost like we see Freya kind of at rock bottom of her life. And then how do you get out of that? right? And that's what we see her go on that journey for. And I think you
get
really
the-
bring
you're
it
giving
to
me the
life.
chills. Oh, thank you.
Yes,
You're just giving me the
excellent.
chills. I was just thinking, like, I'm just so grateful that they wrote her. They did her justice.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
grateful.
I agree. And we're so grateful that you spent the time to join us here today. Danielle, we really appreciate
Yes,
it.
thank you very
so
much.
much.
Thank you
Yeah.
guys. This has been so great.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun.
I'm so happy we finally got to meet and we get to share this with everyone and continue making really great games that touch lives. Let's keep it going.
Absolutely.
We
Yeah.
hope so, because the two so far with both God of War has been excellent.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely more human than you would think them to be at first glance.
Absolutely.
Right?
Particularly if you only knew about the previous God of War game.
Believe me, I took a little peek into that world and I was like, oh, wow.
Oh,
I'm really glad I came in on this moment.
yeah. You're like, are you sure this is the right script? Is this the right game?
Yeah. Oh, well, I had no idea even what game I was in until I was at the table read. I'm sure you heard that fun story.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was in the, it was 2014. I knew I was going to be part of an interactive video game. I still didn't really know 100% what that meant. I thought, what I thought to myself was, oh, this will be like Avatar or, like Gollum, like the actor that does
yeah.
Gollum. Like, oh, okay, that's going to be really cool. I've seen these outfits. I think I can do that. This just looks like theater in the round. And I was standing in Santa Monica, in the area before you go into the volume, into the stages. And there was, of course, like this beautiful oil painting of like Kratos. I think he was with the blades of chaos, and it was very emotional.
Right.
And he was so tortured, and I kept looking at it, and I was like, and I think Corey was like standing right by me, and I kept looking at it, and I was like, I think I know the name of that game. Isn't that God of War? And he was like, that's the game you just booked. That's the game that you're in. And I was
Wow.
like, oh. I felt so unprepared. I didn't even know it was Norse mythology. I didn't know it was Freya. I had no idea. And then I go in and I'm reading up against like Chris Judge and Robert Craighead and Alistair Duncan with his Scottish brogue and Adam Harrington. And I'm like, they're going to fire me. This is like, I don't know what is going on. But eventually I found her. It was a little bit of a journey to find her, but in my defense, I had no idea what I was walking into.
You had to catch up a little bit.
And to be fair, I imagine at the time, there's a very select group of people that knew that God of War was going in a Nordic direction at all, right? So
They're very protective of their IP, which I respect 100,000%.
for sure. Yeah. Well, thank you again for giving us the
thank you.
time. Yeah, we really
Thanks,
appreciate
guys.
it. And we hope you had
Yeah.
fun, and we hope that everyone here learned something today. But thank you so much, Danielle. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
All
you.
right. Love everybody. Thank you all for loving the game the way you do. We'll see you soon.
Thank you so much.